Well, the new coronavirus variant Omicron is spreading across the globe at unprecedented rates. The World Health Organization, WHO, has warned that cases of the heavily mutated variant have now been confirmed in 77 countries. Well, to talk more about this, joining us in our Lagos studio is Nsebasi Ekenem. He's a public health physician and also a pharmacist. Thank you for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.
All right. First, is there anything conclusive about the Omicron variants? I mean, because we've been hearing about how it seems vaccines were not enough in terms of, vaccines, yes, and then the Omicron variants. People could still get Omicron variant even though they were vaccinated, and now we're hearing studies saying a booster shot is effective, 70%, South Africa, 75%. But what do we know that's more certain about how Omicron spreads?
Okay, for Omicron, we can categorically say for now that the mortality is far lower than the Delta variant. We can also say that the spread from one person to the other is higher than the Delta variant, and of course the doubling time is far more than the Delta variant. The truth about Omicron is that we can't really say for now the effectiveness of the vaccine, but we know that Pfizer COVID-19 vaccine seems to provide some level of protection against it, especially when administered as a booster dose. But scientists across the world are still studying. We are still trying to see what will come up in the next few weeks. Even in terms of the mortality, we cannot just conclude, because if you look at the countries under study with regards to the mortality, looking at South Africa, Africa generally did not really suffer much, even throughout the pandemic. So by the time the Omicron is quite prevalent in countries like the US, the UK, we are seeing a lot of cases now, then we can say categorically whether or not the mortality is high. But for the vaccines, we still believe that the booster shot provides some level of protection against Omicron.
So it's interesting you mentioned Pfizer, which is an mRNA vaccine. So Ogun State says it started administering the booster, and it's saying regardless of if you've taken other vaccines like the AstraZeneca or Moderna, you can take the mRNA booster vaccine. Why is this?
Well, because of the technology used. mRNA vaccines are actually messenger RNAs compared to virus variants like AstraZeneca. So when it comes to handling different kinds of variants, it might just be difficult for the other kinds of vaccine to provide that level of protection. But for mRNA, it works with a technology that stimulates the production of a protein. So whatever protein it produces actually targets close to whatever variant is coming up. But what we are saying is, even though it's more effective, much more effective compared to the AstraZeneca and the other ones, but we're looking at the fact that with more mutation and with the development of more variants, we might probably get to a point where some of the existing vaccines may not be that effective against it.
So for people who took first two shots, AstraZeneca and Moderna, how do you convince them that the shots they've taken are not inferior if you're insisting that a Pfizer or an mRNA vaccine should be the booster?
No, simply, it's not just, this is not the first time we are talking about booster doses. Even in many other vaccines that we've taken in the past, before COVID-19 vaccine, we always talk about booster after a period of time. So what booster basically does is to re-stimulate the immune system against a particular pathogen. So in this case, we are saying that, look, if you look at the profile, the efficacy profile of all these vaccines, you still see that our mRNA were far better compared to the other ones. So that's why we're saying that against newer strains, that mRNA has a better ability, to provide that protection. And that is why we are, recommending that for a booster. And apart from that, even the studies that have been carried out everywhere, South Africa, UK, everywhere, still points to the fact that mRNA is much more effective against newer variants of the virus. And that's why we need to take that as a booster
Where
dose.
would you place the J&J vaccine and then the booster?
Well, J&J vaccine, I mean, the booster dose comes as a second dose of J&J. And studies so far has also shown that J&J, the second shot of J&J as a booster dose is effective, even against some of the new variants that we've seen, the Delta variant that we've seen before. Although we don't have sufficient study to show the effectiveness with Omicron. And we are hoping that in the next few weeks, because as I speak to you now, studies are on the way, and within the next few weeks, we are going to get some more information about Omicron and J&J. But for now, we are recommending that J&J's second dose should be given as a booster for the first dose. And all the boosters we're recommending 6 months after the first dose.
All right. We're going to go on a break now, but, perhaps you should mull on this question, and that is that, I mean, we are starting our booster doses, shots at this point, but then we still have millions of people who are yet to even receive a shot of the vaccine. You can tell us why when we return. Please stay with us. Welcome back to the program, and we've been talking to public health physician and pharmacist, Sabasi Ekanem. Thank you for your patience. So, I mean, back to that last question, this direction, considering the population unvaccinated, should we be proceeding with the booster doses?
I think it's actually not really wise, if you ask me, for us to focus on booster doses when we have a large population that has really not received even a single shot of the vaccine. I think we should channel much of our energy to making sure that we get people to take the first dose and, of course, the second dose of the vaccine. If you look at the percentage, we are barely at 7% of the population, and that's really poor. That's far away from the 70% herd immunity targets that we have. So I know that a lot of us are trying to be a bit ambitious. We are trying to see how we can get the booster dose. We want to be fine. We want to be safe. But then I think it's important that we look at covering more people, because when you leave a larger chunk of the population unvaccinated at all, you keep a cluster of people that are a threat to the rest of the population. So I think we must strengthen access to vaccination for a large portion of the Nigerian population that have not really taken either the first or the second or even both of them. And then we can then look towards, the booster dose. And
according to the WHO Africa region, they're saying it's not until August 2024 that Africa might be 70% fully vaccinated, and this is at the rate we're going. Let's talk about Lagos, especially with the cases it's been recording so far. I mean, it's close to the holidays, and then we have the highly transmissible Omicron. What extra measures should we be taking today to stop the fourth wave from spreading?
So for me, it's a very big concern for me, given the fact that we are going to the Yuletide season with lots of celebrations, and you're going to see lots of people in crowded places and all of that. And yet, at the same time, we are having a highly transmissible version or variant of COVID-19 virus. I think what we need to do at this time is we need to get Lagosians or Nigerians as a whole to take this vaccine. And of course, we need to re-emphasize the need for Nigerians to adhere to the public health measures. There is no way in the world that we would say that taking 2 shots, even a booster dose, will protect you 100% from the virus. So that leaves a room for people to still adhere to the public health measures. Unfortunately, you move around the streets of Nigeria, and then you see a lot of people. Probably the only person that wears a mask is seen as the odd man out. It's not supposed to be so. We are still in the midst of the pandemic. We are still very much in the midst of the pandemic. And so Nigerians should learn to take responsibility. During this Yuletide season, let's make sure that we avoid crowded places. We will have more Christmas, more Yuletide to celebrate if we remain alive. And the only way we can guarantee that is to make sure we adhere to the public health measures, hand sanitation, hand hygiene, respiratory hygiene, and avoidance of crowded places.
We always appreciate your time on the program. Thank you so much, Dr. Nseba Sekanem, for joining us on the program.
Thank you for having me.